Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Sustainability Simplified, your bi monthly dose of how to seamlessly build an action oriented, sustainable, and profitable business. We're also the official podcast for the Sustainability Council Network, an international network of sustainability enthusiasts, professionals, and entrepreneurs registered on sustainabilitycouncil.in. I'm your host, Zitin, and today we'll be getting into conversation on a much talked about topic, which is sustainable clothing. So you'll find out more as I welcome with me Akshath Bhatia, who is the founder of Woodwose Organic. Welcome, Akshath. It's wonderful to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Zitin. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm very well. Thanks so much for popping by. Do you want to dive in directly? Are you ready?
Yes, we can begin.
Okay, awesome. So first, I'd like to ask you as to, or begin by asking, if you can share a little bit about brand Woodbose Organic and how did the idea really come to you?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the idea really came to me when I started my career in a consulting firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yeah,
I think after about 3 years, I quit my job. I moved to the family business, which is in textile exports, clothing exports. And while I was there, I would go to a lot of the factories, visit, and sort of look at the ongoing orders. And I think I saw firsthand, some of the bad effects or the negative effects of the clothing industry on the environmental and the social aspects.
yeah,
And so I was kind of, alarmed at what I was seeing because when I was outside the industry, you hear a lot about it, but sort of being as a part of the industry, when you see it firsthand, it sort of has a different impact on you. And at that time, organic food was already a pretty big growing movement.
yeah.
So I was curious to learn if there's something about sustainability in clothing as well. So I did a bit of research and I came across this concept of sustainable clothing. So essentially, what you do is you take sustainable fibers, right? So you can take like cotton, bamboo, then there's hemp. So there's a variety of sustainable fibers, and you kind of put them through an environmentally and socially responsible supply chain. So the manufacturing of it ensures that the environmental parameters are strictly met. So there's no sort of compromise in terms of causing harm to the environment through
Yeah.
both pollution and also from the agricultural lens of it. And then also the other flip side is the social aspect where you're ensuring that worker rights are maintained. There's obviously no child labor. People are paid like a decent living wage, all of that stuff. And there's, uh, good workplace practices and safety conditions for them to be working. So that's essentially how Woodwose was born. And our goal at Woodwose is essentially to transform the clothing industry as a whole. And we want to make sustainable clothing a norm and not just a fad. So we want to make it accessible to as many people, and we want to bring about a mass change in the industry by making it more into a movement and making it accessible to as many people.
Fantastic. I think that's one of the very big sort of points. And, I want to capture the last piece that you mentioned, which is specifically around like how do we move beyond making it just a fad or like a trend, but something that's more sort of ingrained in our lifestyle, but also something that's accessible. Because a lot of times people, and, people say this about sustainability as a whole, they are like, oh, it's a very elitist thing and only people who are
Yeah,
very out there are able to kind of access it. But I think the mission that you're trying to sort of bring alive through your brand is to also bring that accessibility to the last mile for
exactly.
so which is
Yeah.
which is absolutely fantastic. So on that note, if you can share a little bit about the product line and yeah, before you get into that, just for everybody else to see, I am wearing a Woodwose Organic t-shirt right now, and I use it very often in my yoga practice. And then now I'm going to give it to you to talk a little bit more about the range and what all you offer.
Yeah, and for the curious listeners, so she's wearing the bamboo olive green color, and yeah, it looks good on you, Zatin.
Thank
So thank
you.
you for the kind words on it. So essentially, on our product line, we currently have two two sort of fabrics and products made from two fabrics on offering. The first one being organic cotton, and the second one being bamboo. So our organic cotton t-shirts are more reasonably priced. Like I'd mentioned, we want to make it more accessible to the wider audience. So it's priced quite moderately at around 500 rupees for a t-shirt, both for men and women. And our bamboo ranges anywhere between 699 to 899 from depending on the style. So a woman's tank top can be 699, whereas a men's t-shirt, which is a larger piece of clothing, is about 899. And that's slightly more on the premium side, just because bamboo, it's tougher to come by. It's not as readily available, so it's more expensive to procure and manufacture. And essentially, every product that we introduce into our product line, we look at three important factors before sort of introducing this into our mainstream sort of product line. So we look at the sustainability qualities of that material. So from the lens of its agricultural sustainability, and also in terms of how it's cultivated. Number two, we look at it the comfort properties it offers to the wearer, right? So bamboo, for example, like what you would have experienced, is really soft on the skin. So sometimes you feel like you're not wearing anything, and it's very
Yeah,
breathable as well.
totally.
Yeah. And the third thing we look at is the functionality of the material itself. So bamboo, for instance, is moisture wicking, and also it's extremely breathable. The organic cotton is antibacterial. So again, just to reiterate, we currently do organic cotton and bamboo. Cotton being more moderately priced, bamboo ranging anywhere from mid to sort of the high end price factor. And we look at the sustainability of the material, the comfort properties it offers to the wearer, and also the functionality of the material itself.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That was a very detailed sort of breakdown into what finally comes out as this. So thanks for sharing that. Amazing. So now getting into a little bit of detail of this whole process, Akshat. When we look at the maker's end, as to from your side of the manufacturing end, could you talk a little bit about the organic aspect? So you mentioned bamboo, and then you mentioned also organic cotton. But then, where do you obtain the material from? How does the process work about? And a little more so that our listeners are more aware about where it's really coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. I think transparency into the supply chain is another big point that that people are concerned about, and it's important for brands and manufacturers to kind of show that to the end consumer as well.
Yeah,
So currently, like I mentioned, we do organic cotton and bamboo. So our organic cotton is the cotton is all sourced in India, because India is a cotton growing country.
yeah,
Now, if you ask me which region exactly, that might be tough to kind of say, because the way the industry works is it's sort of there's bulk buying from different farmers in different regions,
yeah,
and then the mills go and buy it from this middleman, right? So we
right.
directly work with mills to procure the organic cotton fabric.
Sure,
So I wouldn't exactly know from which state or from which region the organic cotton is coming, but it's predominantly from India.
sure.
Now, bamboo is something that grows naturally in high up, sort of high altitude regions. So the bamboo that comes, again, the fiber is sourced from the bamboo regions in northeast India or the mountain regions surrounding the northeast of India. So we kind of the middlemen kind of source the fibers from there. Now, when it comes to the manufacturing, all of the manufacturing is done in India. And what we do is, so all of the stages of manufacturing, which is, knitting it into a fabric, then sort of dyeing the fabric, then if there's any printing the fabric, and finally stitching. So all of this is done in GOTS certified uh, partners. So GOTS or GOTS is a certification provided by an agency that essentially audits all of these different partners for their environmental and social parameters. They have a very strict guideline in terms of what needs to be followed, and they kind of conduct an audit in each of these partners, whoever wants to apply for that certificate. And only if they meet those environmental and social parameters or sort of guidelines, only then is the certificate issued. And essentially, GOTS stands for Global Organic Textile Standards, which, and what we do is all of our clothing is sent through a supply chain that is GOTS certified.
Right.
So that way we ensure that, like so what I'd mentioned in my earlier question was we look at the sustainable qualities of the material, right? Which means we've approved to use organic cotton and bamboo, and then we ensure it goes through an environmentally and socially responsible supply chain, so that the end product is obviously, like it's something that the wearer can trust, and also, it also offers those benefits, like I mentioned, both from a sustainability lens and also from the functionality lens.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was
Yeah,
very insightful, I'm sure, for a lot of our listeners who may or may not be sort of aware about which are the different certification agencies, what is the full process that goes behind making one t-shirt.
yeah,
Um, Great. Now, shifting lenses to the consumer end, what do you
yeah.
think are the benefits that consumers can expect to experience using Woodwose organic products?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think, a lot of things about these clothing is, yes, there's one environmental aspect, which is, I think we need to be choosing the right choice as consumers.
Yeah,
But there's also the other aspect of, like, are we giving the consumers the right choice, right? So, and I
yeah,
think that really comes from the fact that we need to offer benefits to the consumer in their day-to-day use. So what happens is, now when you take bamboo, for example. So bamboo naturally, because of, its inherent qualities in sort of the fiber itself,
yeah.
it sort of is naturally more breathable. It can, wick away more moisture from the body, and we've actually kind of tested this out. So I did kind of dip the t-shirt in water, and I dipped the cotton t-shirt as well, and I kind of weighed the t-shirts after that. And bamboo can hold three times its weight, or three times its weight in water. Or sorry, like three times the weight of. It can go three times above its weight and have that much water sort of in the. It can hold that much quantity of
Absorption.
it, right? Whereas a cotton t-shirt can't. So essentially, the way that translates to a benefit for the wearer is, obviously, it's breathable, and also in hot summer days, like in tropical countries, like obviously like India, where you're constantly in the summer sweating a lot, it wicks away the sort of the sweat from your body and keeps you cool and dry.
Right.
So it's comfortable, it's breathable, and sort of it's like moisture wicking as well. So that's what bamboo offers in terms of benefits to the wearer. And obviously, when it comes to wood versus bamboo material, we've gone through a lot of trial and error. So our initial first sort of fabric that we launched was for lack of a better word, pretty bad. For It was horrible.
Uh
you know,
oh.
it wasn't very durable, but we've since then worked on it quite a bit, and we made it quite durable now. So our bamboo doesn't shrink, it doesn't sort of spill, and at the same time, it offers all of these benefits to the wearer. So it's durable as well. Now, talking about organic cotton, so organic cotton, because of the fact that it's organic, it it has antibacterial properties. So we've actually lab tested this, and we've seen that it kills certain strains of bacteria up to like 98 or 99%, which means that even as you're sweating, like there's not much bacteria buildup, and it's actually really good for people who have sensitive skin or tend to develop like skin rashes and stuff, because the cotton's organic, the dyes used are also organic and certified, so there's no harsh chemicals in them.
Sure.
The other benefit that the organic cotton offers is cotton is also breathable. I would say it's not as breathable as bamboo, but
Yeah.
cotton is in itself quite breathable, and it's also thermoregulating, which means that it kind of, if it's a hot day, it kind of keeps you cool. If it's cold, it keeps you a little hot. So cotton naturally has those thermoregulating properties.
Right. Right. Awesome. That was, again, a very detailed breakdown. So that helps sort of consumers who are thinking about making that choice or that switch to really bamboo sort of clothing or organic cotton clothing.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for sharing that. Before we move to the concluding part, where I'd like to, like you to share, one piece of advice. How is it that people who are listening to this or watching this episode can reach out to Woodwose?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us directly over email. So our email is info@woodwose.in. Or you could also just go on our Instagram page, which our handle is at the rate Woodwose Organic Clothing, and you can just DM us, or even on Facebook. So you can reach out to us directly. You can even drop us a note on our website. We have a WhatsApp sort of a chat feature there, so you can just go and look at woodwose.in. And so yeah, email, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, any way of reaching us. Or
Amazing.
if you're old school, you can drop us a letter as well on our on our office address.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that. And all the links and the details for everybody who's watching and listening will be in the caption as well. So you can directly access it there as well. Now, moving to the concluding part of the episode, really,
Yeah,
I wanted you to share now, you've had some experience within this space, right? And if you
yeah.
can share any advice to people who are, let's say, thinking about making that shift or maybe starting a business into this space of sustainable clothing, what would be your one top advice to them?
Yeah, I would say the one top advice would be really always start from the customer. So try and figure out what the customer's problems are, and then try to solve for those problems, as opposed to just saying trying to take like an organic or a sustainable clothing concept and trying to sell its sustainable or organic fact. Because by default, organic or sustainable fabrics are slightly more expensive compared to sort of like their regular peers in the market.
Yeah,
So it becomes even the more important to really understand the customer's pain points
yeah,
and to begin designing from there. I think the other thing I would also sort of urge listeners to think about is like sustainability doesn't have to be the core offering of your business. So you can also have sustainability as a value added service. Like if I look at businesses such as reselling secondhand clothes, or even sort of borrowing clothes, like you have party dresses or like important event dresses that people borrow. So while the cloth itself might not be sustainably made and organic sort of fabrics, uh, the offering of the business still sort of promotes reuse and reduces waste, right? So
yeah.
so don't just think of it as like always wanting to use a sustainable fabric, but sometimes you can also use that an additional value added service. So it can be innovation from the business model side as well.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was
No
very,
problem.
very insightful. Thanks very much. Again, so great. So thanks for sharing all those many insights and details about Woodwose and also your points of view around sustainable clothing and how that can develop really as a business model or
Right.
as a periphery or a value added service.
Yeah.
So just want to thank you for coming on the show, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Yeah, likewise. No, quite insightful questions. So, no, thank you for having me on the show. And again, like I mentioned, if any listeners have any questions, they can reach out to us on our email ID, on our Facebook, Instagram handle, whichever it is. And yeah, we look forward to kind of serving more customers and trying to sort of get to our mission of making this more of a norm in the industry.
Amazing. Thanks so much. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening. And if you liked this podcast, feel free to share it in your network. My one takeaway from this episode was always start with the customer and the problem at hand, really. I'd love to hear your key takeaway from today. Do share it with me on my socials. You'll find me on at Zitin Munshi. That's at ZITIN MUNSHI. Until next time.